It's causing an official in one North African country to warn against taking action without permission. The Air Force commander of Libya's internationally recognized government says the military will target any foreign vessel found trespassing in the country's waters. RT's Polly Boyka reports.
The decision to launch the naval operation has just been taken.
The EU says it wants to identify, capture and dispose of vessels operated by human traffickers and those helping to smuggle migrants across the Med. Just to remind you that Libya has been more or less in a state of chaos ever since the NATO-led intervention that led to the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011. And it's thought that Libya's coastal towns are a major hub for the many thousands of migrants trying to cross the Med on that perilous journey, which is why the EU was thinking of combating the area of Libyan waters in the first place. But for the moment, this naval operation is confined to international waters. It's limited to intelligence gathering, albeit with the use of submarines and drones. But the initial plan was a lot wider in scope. It involved capturing and even destroying the Libyan people traffickers' ships, possibly even in Libyan waters and in Libyan coastal areas. But that scope of operation would require a UN Security Council operation, and obviously the European Union does not have that yet, just like it doesn't have the permission of the Libyan government, judging by this threat from the Libyan military commander to effectively bomb any EU vessels in its waters. That permission isn't there yet, and we're going to be waiting for a response from the European Union to that threat from the Libyan military commander.
And the editor of the Pan-African Newswire website says the internationally recognized Libyan government has to accept some of the blame.
They, in fact, were installed objectively by the European Union and the United States as a result of the war of regime change that was waged some 4 years ago. It would have been great to have these same political elements in 2011 saying that Libya must resolve its own internal problems and not call in the CIA, the Pentagon, and NATO to bomb the country for 7.5 months, to destroy the government, to break down all societal institutions, to, in fact, create the chaos that exists there now.
10 past the hour here in Moscow. Protests over an increase in electricity prices carried on through the night in the Armenian capital. Thousands of protesters attempting to get all the way to the presidential palace. On Tuesday, the country's president, Sergei Sargsyan, expressed a willingness to talk with the reps of the movement. But protesters insist the meeting can only take place on live TV. The path to the president's residence was blocked off by police with batons and shields. The demonstrators also built barricades to resist any forcefulness from the police that did happen a day earlier. Initial anger was sparked by the Armenian government's plans to increase energy tariffs by 16% in August. The increase would cost every house an extra $8 to $10 for U.S. soldiers going into combat. We look at why journalists reporting from war zones are now listed as potential combatants or even terrorists. Also coming, the fate of Fabio Capello hanging in the balance. Russia's football union considering whether to sack him as national coach, despite owing the Italian millions in unpaid wages. Russia with claws and fangs. This is the kind of image being taught to some students in the Netherlands. In one Dutch social studies textbook, pupils were asked to describe what's happening in a particular cartoon. And the image ultimately shows Russia portrayed like a monster here, devouring Ukraine, while Europe offers a helping hand. Another image in the same textbook also characterized Russia as a non-free country, while the EU and the US were pictured as the most free. And the images in the textbook went viral after one angry father shared it online, and we had a chance to speak with him.
Since the end of the Second World War, anti-Russian propaganda in the Netherlands has been huge. Since the fall of the so-called Iron Curtain, it has shrunk a little. All Dutch news media share the same anti-Putin, anti-Russia, anti-communist bias, as if Russia was still a communist country today.
The evil Russia images triggered strong reactions online. Some complain the propaganda is so blunt that even, well, the most gullible people think it's suspicious. Others suggested that anti-Russian propaganda in European textbooks is nothing new. Some parents were also concerned that this kind of material could become widespread. We spoke to activist Ancilla Tillier.
I think it's definitely a way of demonizing Russia in this conflict, which is not at all a nuanced view whatsoever. The picture that was shown with the world map, which was colored, green being the most free countries and red being the most unfree countries in the world, I think is highly, highly biased from a Western standpoint. In my personal opinion, it is absolutely propaganda, anti-Russian propaganda, which is ironic because Russia is often accused of spewing propaganda, but it seems like we're not able to recognize that we ourselves are also being propagandized by our own governments, by our own media, and I think it's a dangerous road we're heading towards.
Right, on the way here on the program, we look at the roots of America's most recent mass shooting. That story with the rest of this hour's top worldwide headlines. Just a sec.